Hey guys, tonight I want to tell you something that's been sitting in my chest for years. It's 1:17 a.m. The fridge is humming like it always does, steady and soft, like it's trying to keep the house from feeling too empty. The porch light's still on. I never remember to turn it off, and there's a half-full glass of orange juice on the table that I don't even remember pouring. But that chair, that damn kitchen chair across from me, it's still pushed in, like he never sat there at all. Still wooden, still chipped at the corner where he once smacked it with a toolbox in frustration. Still his, even if he's been gone for years. I didn't expect grief to arrive like this quietly. During a night snack, I thought it would be loud, cinematic. But no, it waits for silence. It hides in corners like dust. And sometimes, all it takes is a chair to bring everything crashing back. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. I always love seeing that. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let me take you into the heart of it all. My name's Mark. I'm 52. Used to be a plumber, well, still sort of am. You never really quit that job. Not when every family member keeps calling you when a pipe hisses. But I mostly do repair work now. Part-time. Keeps the hands busy. The mind less so. And this story, it's about my father, John. A man of very few words, and even fewer explanations. He was the kind of guy who would rather fix your broken fence than talk about your broken heart. You probably know the type. We weren't close, not in the way sitcoms and Hallmark movies define it. There were no Sunday fishing trips or heartfelt birthday speeches. But he was always there. Present in a way that didn't ask for recognition. Solid, unmoving, like a beam holding up the house. But the thing is, he died before I ever said thank you. And that, somehow, feels heavier than all the rest of it. I didn't get to thank him for staying up late to help me with my science project, even though he didn't know the first thing about baking soda volcanoes. I didn't thank him for showing up to my graduation with grease still on his collar because he didn't want to be late from work. I didn't even thank him for the car, an old rusted thing he fixed up himself that got me to college and back for 4 years. You always think you'll have more time. I remember one Thanksgiving. It must have been 10 years ago. My wife made this overcooked turkey that was dry enough to sand furniture. Everyone tried to politely chew their way through it, except my dad. He just coughed, grinned at her, and asked if she used glue in the marinade. We all laughed. She didn't. He winked and slid her a slice of pie. That was him, blunt, annoying, and weirdly charming in the way only dads can be. But even then, even in that warmth, I didn't say it. Didn't say, "Thank you for making me laugh." Didn't say, "Thank you for showing up, even when I pushed you away." Didn't say, "I love you." And it's not like we had a falling out or some big blow up. No screaming matches. No slamming doors. Just the slow erosion of assumed time. One missed phone call, one "I'll visit next week," one "he's probably fine, I'll check in later." That kind of silence can be louder than any argument. And now, when I sit in this kitchen alone, I realize he was never waiting for me to say it. I was waiting for myself anyway. That's where this starts. With a chair. With a ghost that isn't haunting the room, but haunting me. Because sometimes the loudest thank you is the one that never got said. I remember the last time I saw him. It wasn't some grand occasion. No confetti or closure. Just a Tuesday. One of those forgettable days you wish you'd memorized. I'd stopped by the old house to drop off some PVC fittings he'd asked for. He had this habit of using his kitchen drawer as a toolbox, so among the forks and measuring spoons, you'd always find bolts, rusted nails, and masking tape. Still does something to me. Thinking about that drawer, it was the messiest, most beautiful proof that he lived with his hands. He was sitting on the back step, shirt half buttoned, sipping coffee from a chipped mug with a faded Cubs logo. I teased him, "You're never gonna give up on that team." "Huh?" And he shot back, "I stuck with your teenage attitude, didn't I?" I laughed. We both did. But there was something about that morning his voice sounded thinner. Or maybe it was just the cold creeping into it. I remember how his breath curled out in soft white clouds. I wish I'd stayed longer. I wish I'd sat beside him and asked, "What's going on?" But instead, I handed him the parts, said something like, "Gotta run," and left. 3 weeks later, he was gone. Heart attack. Fast. No warnings. My sister called. I was at the hardware store when the phone buzzed. I picked up a pack of screws. I didn't need just to pretend I had something to hold. Her voice cracked. "Mark?" He didn't make it. I stood there for a while, still holding the screws, staring at a wall of paint swatches. Weird the things your eyes land on when your brain refuses to accept reality. I read the names on them like they mattered. Driftwood beige, morning fog, deep coal. None of them felt right for what I was feeling. I didn't cry right away. Just walked out without buying anything. Drove home in silence. My wife asked me what happened, and I just said, "Dad." That one word broke me. I sat on the edge of our bed, shoes still on, and finally cried. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was like something slowly leaking out of a cracked pipe. Just enough to make a mess. Not enough to notice until it pools. Grief is funny that way. It doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers, sneaks into the corners of your day, into the creak of a floorboard, the smell of motor oil, the sound of a lawnmower 2 blocks over. The funeral was awkward. My father wasn't a man who left instructions. No, play this song or read this poem. Just a will with cremation scribbled in pen at the bottom. My sister tried to put together a slideshow of old photos. She asked me for help. I froze, not because I didn't have the pictures. God knows I did. But every time I opened the folder on my computer labeled Dad, I closed it again. It felt like opening it meant he was really gone, like the pictures would become a replacement, a stand-in, and I wasn't ready to replace him. At the service, I stood beside the urn and didn't know what to say. People came up, shook my hand, said things like, "He was a good man, and he loved you. You know." I nodded, smiled when I could, but the words felt too late. For them, for me, and the truth, I don't remember most of that day. Just flashes, the smell of lilies, the weight of the suit jacket I hadn't worn in years, the way my daughter clung to my pinky, asking, "Is Grandpa sleeping?" I said yes. I don't know why. Maybe because the alternative felt too big for her. Or maybe because I needed someone to believe it wasn't over. After everyone left, I stayed back, alone. Just me and the urn and a chair that creaked too loudly. I sat and whispered. I should have said thank you. I said it over and over, like that could undo the silence between us. But silence is stubborn. It echoes long after you're done talking. I've always thought grief came in waves, but for me, it's more like a draft in an old house, always there, sneaking through the cracks, just cold enough to notice, never enough to fix. After the funeral, I went back to my dad's place alone. My sister couldn't face it, and honestly, I told her I'd take care of things just to spare her. But maybe I needed the quiet, needed to stand in that space where he laughed, shouted at the TV, or silently stirred his coffee at 5:30 every morning. The house smelled the same. That blend of sawdust, old leather, and whatever weird aftershave he stuck with since the 80s. I half expected him to be in the living room, cursing at the bears or yelling from the garage for me to hold the damn flashlight straight. Instead, there was just dust motes dancing in the afternoon light. I wandered from room to room like a ghost looking for someone to haunt. His bedroom was neat, surprisingly so. The closet still had his flannel shirts lined up like soldiers, color-coded not by design, but by habit. I found one of his old jackets and, without really thinking, put it on. It still smelled like him, like motor oil and cinnamon gum. And that's what did it. I sat on the bed, jacket wrapped tight, and cried. Not like before. This was ugly, snotty, gasping. The kind of cry that doesn't just break you, it empties you. I remember thinking, I never thanked him for the bike he fixed after I crashed it. Never told him how proud I was when he taught me to patch drywall. Never said how grateful I was that he came to my divorce hearing, even though he hated my ex and told me so twice, once before the wedding and once during the vows. My dad wasn't affectionate. He didn't do hugs or say I love you unless he was joking or drunk. But he showed up every time. He was there when I totaled my first car. Didn't yell, just sighed and said, "Guess we're walking to the lot together." He was there when I failed out of community college the first time, slid a job ad for HVAC apprentice across the kitchen table and said, "You like air, right?" and he was there, sitting silent. When I confessed to screwing up my marriage, he didn't say much, just patted my shoulder and handed me a beer. That was his version of therapy. I didn't know how much I counted on that presence until it was gone. As I packed boxes, one for tools, one for clothes, one for things I wasn't ready to label, I found a little notebook in his nightstand drawer. It was leather-bound, cracked at the edges. Inside were names and dates, mostly of bills, a few birthdays, and on the very last page, in his scratchy handwriting, were 4 lines. Mark's first job, HVAC start 2002. Mark's divorce final, 2011. Ellie born, 2014. Mark called just to talk, 2018. I stared at that last line for a long time. I don't remember the call. I probably was driving, or folding laundry, or doing one of those things you do without knowing it'll matter to someone. But he remembered, wrote it down. It was the only entry without a date, and that broke me. He noticed the moment I called not to ask for help, or borrow a tool, or vent about life, but just to talk, just to be a son. You think you've got time, that you'll say it tomorrow, that he knows, but maybe they don't. And maybe the problem is, we hope they do, just so we don't have to say it out loud. Because saying it means admitting we needed them, and needing someone, that's terrifying, especially when you spent your whole life trying to prove you didn't. The funny thing about losing someone is that everyone tells you to take your time. What they don't tell you is that time doesn't cooperate. It doesn't pause when you need it to. Doesn't slow down for grief. It just keeps ticking, indifferent as ever. A week after the funeral, I found myself back at work. Same clients, same HVAC calls, same burnt coffee in the break room. I remember replacing a thermostat for a sweet older couple. They kept offering me pie. Bless them. And midway through, I realized I was wearing Dad's old jacket. I hadn't even noticed. The habit was so deeply stitched into me that I'd pulled it on like muscle memory. I stood there, pie plate in hand, and thought, would he have found this funny? That I'm wearing his jacket, doing the job he pushed me toward. Getting offered apple pie by people who probably watch the same baseball games he did. And then it hit me. I'd become him. Not in the way that sons sometimes fear, like turning into their dads out of resentment or rebellion. No. This was gentler. I was filling in his footsteps like plaster into a mold, slowly, unintentionally. But it didn't feel wrong. It felt grounding still. When I got home, I couldn't shake the weight in my chest. So I did something stupid. I dialed his number. I knew it was disconnected. I knew it. But the keypad still remembered it. My fingers still knew the rhythm of the digits. It rang once and went to that automated voice. The number you've dialed is no longer in service. I don't know what I expected. Some cosmic voicemail, a glitch in the universe. All I got was silence, and I think that was the point. There's no magic in grief. No surprise message or ethereal whisper. It's mundane, heavy, It shows up when you're rinsing dishes or driving past the hardware store or reaching for the wrong jacket. That night, I sat in the garage with a beer and started cleaning his workbench. It was a mess of nails, screws, oil cans, and tools with faded orange tape on the handles, his weird system for not losing things. I found the old radio he used to play staticky blues on. It still worked. I tuned it to the same station, half expecting it to summon him like some blue-collar seance. Instead, I got a crackly version of Stormy Monday. Fair enough. I stayed out there for hours, tinkering with nothing. I opened a drawer and found a note taped, of course, because my dad believed tape was better than gravity. It just said, "Check the breaker before cursing." I laughed so hard I almost dropped the wrench. He wrote that after I'd called him, cursing like a sailor, because the garage lights wouldn't turn on, and he drove 45 minutes just to flip a switch. Didn't say "I told you so," just flipped it, patted my shoulder, and handed me a flashlight in case I wanted to feel useful. God, I miss him. I think what hurts most isn't the big stuff. It's not the holidays or birthdays or the Father's Day ads that sneak up like landmines. It's the small things, the muscle memory, the inside jokes, the quiet moments you didn't even realize were special at the time, like the way he always double knocked on the door before coming in, or how he hummed when he read manuals, like his brain needed a soundtrack, or the way he could fix anything, except maybe himself, because, truthfully, for all the love he gave, my dad carried things he never said. I saw it in his eyes some nights, especially when he thought I wasn't looking. Regret has a way of leaving fingerprints, and maybe that's why I've been afraid to sit still, to really look at my own reflection in the window when it gets dark outside. Because what if I've been carrying the same silence? What if I inherited more than his jacket? There's this particular window in our living room, faces west, catches the last of the orange light just before sunset. For years, my dad would sit in the armchair right beside it, sipping something lukewarm and staring out like the sky owed him answers. I never asked what he saw. I assumed it was nothing, maybe everything. Now I sit there, not always, but more often lately. I pretend I'm doing something productive, paying bills, reading a book I'll never finish, but really, I'm just watching that light dip over the neighbor's roof, trying to feel something. I guess that's what grief becomes after a while. Not sharp, just background music, a low hum. One evening, about 3 months after the funeral, my daughter Emma came over. She brought Thai food, her usual peace offering when she suspects I've been spiraling inward again. She kicked off her Then, out of nowhere, she said, "I miss him too." You know, I looked at her, just looked. She smiled, but her eyes were glassy. Grandpa, he used to tape quarters under the table for me to find. Said it was treasure for being good. And just like that, I broke. I didn't cry. Not then. But something in me cracked. A pressure valve loosening. Because I hadn't been able to say that out loud. That I missed him. That he wasn't just my dad. He was her grandpa. the one who made her giggle with his corny jokes, who taught her how to tie a proper knot, who smuggled her bubble gum when her mom said no. I realized I'd been hoarding the grief, like it was mine alone, like no one else had a claim to it. And in doing that, I'd cut off the only people who might have helped me carry it. I made coffee for us badly, because he was always the one who measured it just right, and we sat in silence for a while. Not awkward, not heavy, just still. Then she said, softly, I kept one of his shirts. It still smells like him. And I laughed. Even though my throat was tight, Lynette threw out most of his cologne. Said it smelled like old pennies. Emma shrugged. I liked it. Me too. Later that night, after she left, I went to the hall closet, dug through the boxes we'd half-heartedly labeled Dad with a Sharpie that was running out of ink, found a few photos, some fishing gear, and a book of crosswords with his handwriting filling every margin. On the inside cover, he'd written, Tuesday mornings are for coffee and forgiveness. No context, no explanation, just that. And I sat there, on the floor, surrounded by old flannel and fading ink, and said it out loud for the first time, I forgive you. I don't know what exactly I was forgiving. Maybe all the things we never talked about. The gaps, the quiet exits, the hard silences. Maybe myself. That night, I slept in his flannel. It was too warm. And I woke up sweating at 2 a.m. But I didn't take it off. I just laid there, thinking about quarters under the table, crossword margins, and Tuesday mornings. He never said goodbye. You know, not in any clear way, just kind of faded out, like the static between radio stations. But he left little things, tape on handles, scribbled notes, the kind of legacy that doesn't shout, it whispers. And lately, I've been listening. Grief makes you weird. That's something no one really tells you. They talk about sadness. Sure, the tears, the longing, but not about the absurd moments, how one day you're crying into your dad's flannel, and the next, you're in a grocery aisle nearly picking a fight with a stranger over the last box of his favorite cereal. Frosted mini wheats. The man ate them like it was religion. I was standing there, holding the box like it meant something cosmic. Some kid, couldn't have been older than 20, reached for it, then saw the look on my face and backed off like I was wielding a weapon. I muttered thanks and walked off, feeling slightly deranged. It wasn't about the cereal. Of course not. But in that moment, it felt like the only thread holding me to a version of him that still had a pulse. A week later, I found myself on the porch with Lynette. She was planting new flower zinnias. I think Dad would have called them fussy little things. He liked roses, the kind that bloomed strong and smelled like actual something. I asked her if she missed him. She didn't look up, just kept pressing soil around a stem. Sometimes, she said, but missing him doesn't fix the mess. That stung. I knew what she meant. Their marriage wasn't all Sunday dinners and hand-holding. There were fights, long ones, the kind that echo through walls even when you're a grown man visiting for holidays. Still, it felt harsh. He tried. I said. She did look up then. Dirt on her cheek. Eyes tired. He did. It was the first time we'd said anything real about him since the service. Most of the weeks after had been logistics lawyers, bank stuff, clearing out his truck, canceling magazine subscriptions, mundane grief. But this was different. We sat there for a while, sipping lemonade she'd made too strong, watching the sun set behind the neighbor's fence. She finally said, "You look like him when you're tired." It was meant as an observation, I think. But it cracked something open in me, because I'd been trying so hard not to be like him, not to carry his temper, his forgetfulness, his way of shutting down when things got heavy. But I'd also inherited his laugh, his awful dancing, his love for fixing things with duct tape instead of real tools. You don't get to choose what parts of someone stay with you. You just wake up one day and realize you're tying your shoes like they did, or hearing their voice in your head when you're about to do something stupid. There's a quiet truth in that, a kind of haunting, but the gentle kind. That night, I played one of his old voicemail messages. I'd saved it, not because it said anything profound, just a quick, "Call me back when you get a second, Bud." But it was his voice, clear, confident. There. I replayed it 3 times, then 4. Then I stopped, afraid that somehow playing it too much would wear it out, like an old cassette tape, thinning with each rewind. I don't know if I'm healing. That word feels too neat, too clean, like it promises some end point. But I'm remembering him without flinching as much. That's something. Right. I've started keeping a notebook. Nothing fancy. Just things I want to remember, stuff he said, habits he had, recipes he ruined. I wrote down Tuesday mornings are for coffee and forgiveness. Still don't know what it means, but maybe one day I will. Maybe it was for me, or maybe it was for him. Either way, I write it again, and I underline it this time. A month after Dad passed, I found the letter. It wasn't in a shoebox or tucked neatly away in a desk drawer like in the movies. No dramatic "to my son" scrawled on the front. No special paper. It was just folded in half, stuffed behind an expired car insurance form in the glove compartment of his old Ford. It had my name on it. Ben. That was all. The handwriting was messy, like he wrote it in a hurry, or maybe after a few beers. My first instinct was to laugh. Of course he wouldn't leave some poetic farewell. That wasn't his style. His love came in grunt form: a nod, a pat on the back, a second helping of mashed potatoes. Still, my fingers shook when I unfolded it. I read it in the driver's seat, with the window cracked, the air stale with that baked upholstery smell only old trucks have. The letter started, "If you're reading this, I either chickened out or you're going through my crap." Accurate on both counts. He rambled, like he always did when he was trying to say something real. It wasn't long, maybe a paragraph, but he said he was proud of me. Said he wished he'd said that more. I wasn't always great at the dad thing. You knew that, but I always wanted to be. That line, I read it 5 times, because, yeah, I did know. I knew he tried. I also knew he failed a lot. Like the time he forgot to show up for my college tour because he got distracted with work. Or how he couldn't say I love you without tacking on, man, like it needed to be toughened up. But hearing him admit that he knew he fell short but never stopped wanting to be better, that's something. That letter didn't fix anything. It didn't erase the years of silence or undo the fights or magically turn him into the dad I used to wish I had. But it softened something in me. I think that's what grief does if you let it. It doesn't erase. It rounds off the edges. Later that night, I showed the letter to Lynette. She cried. Not big sobs, just one of those quiet tears that rolls down your cheek and disappears into your collar before you even notice it. She said, "He never told me he wrote you anything." I shrugged. Probably didn't plan to. We sat there on the porch again, drinking iced tea this time. The dog her yappy mutt named Sparky snored beside us. And for the first time since the funeral, we laughed, really laughed. About the time Dad tried to assemble a grill without the instructions and nearly blew up the backyard. About the way he'd mispronounce gnocchi every single time and insist he was right. About how he once sang Bon Jovi at karaoke so badly the machine glitched. The letter had opened a small door, and through it came memories that didn't sting. I kept it in my wallet for a few days, then moved it to a small box on my nightstand, along with his watch, his lucky coin, and that ridiculous pen he insisted was worth something, but probably wasn't. Sometimes I still replay the voicemail. Not every night, just when it's too quiet and I need the sound of someone who once called me Bud like it meant the world. And sometimes I imagine a different version of our last conversation, one where I didn't rush off the phone, where I asked him how he really felt about being a dad, where he told me that cereal didn't matter, and he would have picked me every time. But even that imaginary conversation ends the same way, with him laughing, that wheezy, belly-deep laugh that shook the windows. I miss that sound. I miss him. And I'm starting to think it's okay if I always do. A couple of weeks after finding the letter, I finally visited his grave. I'd been putting it off, not for any dramatic reason. I just didn't know what to say. Or maybe I was afraid I'd say too much. Isn't that the thing about cemeteries? They're quiet places where you end up talking the most. The grass was overgrown. The little vase stuck in the ground beside the headstone had fake daisies bleached by the sun. He would have hated that. He once told me fake flowers were for people who can't be bothered to remember the real thing. I brought him a cup of gas station coffee instead. Black, no sugar, still hot. I sat on the ground. The dirt was hard, sun-baked. My back hurt after 5 minutes, but I didn't move. I just talked. I told him about the letter. I told him I'd been angry for a long time. Angry about the missed games, the quiet dinners, the way he never came to the parent-teacher nights, even though I always wrote reminders on the fridge. I told him I forgave him, not because I was some generous saint of a son, but because holding it all in felt heavier than just saying it out loud. And then I said thank you for the small things he did get right, for driving me to the DMV and waiting in that godforsaken line for 3 hours without complaining once, for the time he helped me fix my first flat tire without making me feel like an idiot, for letting me cry once, just once, when my first girlfriend dumped me, and not saying a single word, just passing me a bag of chips. I thanked him for loving me the way he knew how, even when I couldn't see it, and I told him that maybe that was enough. You ever notice how the world doesn't stop? When you say something important, I kept expecting the wind to pick up, or a bird to land on the headstone, or some cosmic sign. But nothing happened. A leaf fell off a tree. A car honked in the distance. Life went on. I stayed until the coffee turned cold. Then I stood, gave the headstone a little pat, like I used to do on his shoulder when I was a teenager, and said, "Okay, Dad," and I left. I didn't feel lighter or transformed. That's the truth. No one tells you about closure. It's not a door slamming shut. It's a slow hinge creaking toward open. It's a shift, a breath, a barely there release. That night, I dreamed about him for the first time in years. We were sitting at the kitchen table. He was younger than I remembered, maybe 50. No gray in his beard yet. He was wearing that ratty flannel shirt Mom used to threaten to throw out every fall. He poured 2 bowls of cereal, his favorite honey bunches of oats. I hated that stuff, but in the dream, I ate it anyway. We didn't talk. We just ate. And he smiled at me with the kind of easy comfort I don't remember seeing often when he was alive. When I woke up, I didn't cry. I just sat there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, thinking maybe that was the conversation we never had. Maybe dreams do what real life forgets to finish. You know what's strange? Since then, I've started to see him in other places. Not ghosts, not signs from the beyond, just echoes. The smell of sawdust at a hardware store. The way someone clears their throat before speaking. A laugh from a stranger that's a little too familiar. It used to break me. Now, it makes me smile. It's funny how the grief softens before the memory does. You'd think it would be the other way around, that the sharpest edges of pain would be tethered to the clearest moments. But what I've found is, sometimes I can remember my dad vividly without the punch in the gut. And other times, I'll feel this ache this small, insistent pulse of sadness and not be able to place the source of it at all. There was one moment that caught me off guard recently. I was watching my friend's kid play baseball. He's 11, all knees and awkward swings, and I saw his dad shout encouragement from behind the fence. Not the usual dad yelling, either. It was soft, measured, just to keep your eye on it. But something about that broke me. I had to walk to the other end of the field just to pull myself together. And I realized right there, by the snack bar, pretending to be deeply invested in a Gatorade shelf, I wasn't crying for what happened. I was crying for what never did. What I'd spent so many years telling myself I didn't need. You know, The biggest lie we tell ourselves is I'm fine. And the second biggest is it doesn't matter now. It does matter. Not because we can go back and change it, but because it made us who we are. And if we don't honor it, if we don't name it and sit with it, it starts to shape us in silence, quietly, sharply. So I've started talking about him more, not in some grand therapy circle way, just casually, with my wife, with my friends, sometimes with strangers who didn't ask and probably wish I hadn't started. The more I say his name, the less power it holds. He's not a shadow anymore. He's just a guy who made mistakes and had bad timing and didn't know how to say, "I love you" out loud, which honestly is a lot of us. I've even started telling stories about the good times, like when he tried to fix the dishwasher with duct tape and a hammer, or when he built a tree house and it leaned so far to the left it looked like it was winking at the neighbor's dog. He was flawed, frustrating, often absent, but he was mine. And maybe that's what being an adult really is. Learning to carry both truths at once. The pain and the love. The silence and the laughter. The wound and the healing. There's one last thing I haven't told you. A few weeks ago, I got a letter from my own son. He's 22 now. Lives across the country. We talk, but not often. Work. Life. You know the story. His letter was short, just a few lines. He said, "I know you tried. I see that now. I love you, Dad." And it hit me like a wave I didn't see coming. Because maybe all this reckoning with my father, this late night talking into the void, it wasn't just for him. Maybe it was for me. So I wouldn't pass it down like some silent family heirloom. Maybe healing isn't something you finish. Maybe it's something you inherit, carry, and hopefully soften for the next one in line. The last time I visited his grave, I didn't bring flowers. I brought coffee. It was one of those cold mornings where the air feels like it's borrowing its bite from February, even though the calendar says it's April. The sky was that grayish white, like a bed sheet that's been washed too many times. I parked under the same oak tree as always, half expecting to find a parking ticket for staying too long in unresolved emotion. I took a sip of the coffee. It was too hot. I burnt my tongue and I sat down on the edge of the grass, facing the stone, with his name carved into it, like a secret finally admitted. I didn't say much, just, "Hey," like I might run into him again next week. And I sat there, let my knees get stiff, let my fingers go numb. I thought about all the things we never said, the arguments we never had, which might have actually helped, the father-son talks that never happened, the way he never taught me to shave, or how to change a tire, or that it's okay to cry during sad movies, which I absolutely do now. By the way, Pixar is brutal, but I also thought about the things I did learn from his silence, from his distance. I learned to show up. I learned to listen better. I learned that love isn't always loud, and sometimes the quietest forms of it are the ones we crave the longest. I forgave him, not because he asked, not because he deserved it in some moral scorecard way, but because I needed to. I needed to let go of the version of him I built to protect myself. The villain, the ghost, the judge. And in doing that, I started to let go of the version of me that always felt like a kid waiting on the porch for headlights that never came. He wasn't the father I needed, but he was the one I had. And maybe the most honest thing I can do now is try to be both for my own son. When I got back in the car, I looked in the rearview mirror, not at myself, at the spot behind me where he rested, and I whispered, "Thanks for the coffee." It sounds ridiculous, I know, but maybe healing is allowed to be ridiculous. Maybe we don't have to make it poetic or symmetrical. Maybe it's just messy and slow and awkward, like dancing with someone who never learned the steps but still trying. Still reaching out, I drove home in silence. No music. Just the sound of tires on damp pavement and the low hum of memory rattling around in the cup holder. And I thought, I'm okay. Not fixed, not free of it, but okay, which is more than I used to believe was possible. So if you're still listening, wherever you are at 2 a.m. under a blanket, or on a night shift break in some faraway city, I just want to say thank you for sitting with me through this. I don't know your story, but I know the shape of ache. I know the silence that can grow between two people like moss on a stone, slowly, quietly, until the surface is almost unrecognizable. And I know the courage it takes to reach for it anyway. To say, I miss you, even if no one's there to hear it. Grief doesn't end. It just changes outfits. Sometimes it wears anger, sometimes numbness, sometimes that hollow kind of peace that settles in when you've cried all the tears you can. But if you carry it gently, if you let it teach you without hardening you, it becomes something else. It becomes memory. It becomes a voice you can finally talk back to. It becomes love, held at a distance, but still held. So, tonight, before you fall asleep, maybe think of someone you haven't forgiven yet, maybe even yourself. And if you can't let go all at once, just loosen your grip a little. Let something fall away, because some nights, the healing doesn't look like a breakthrough. It looks like sitting quietly in the dark, breathing in, breathing out, and knowing you're not alone in it. Sleep well, friend. I'll be here next time.